So, episode 3, Tea Talks, Duchess and Sarah. Well, it is just the gift that just keeps on giving to me. I love reviewing this. I'm going to do it every week. I've even got a playlist for it now. Now, to be fair, they keep getting more professional. The opening part of the podcast is a lot slicker. It's a lot more professional. The music is great. It's all good until Sarah said this. Now, it was pretty much apropos of nothing, but she said, "This is very hard." Well, of course it is, because with Sarah, everything's very, very hard, because I'm learning how to be a friend. And Sarah Thompson went, "Oh." And then she said, "I never talk about what I get up to. This is a new experience for me." And I went, "Really? I feel like you talk about what you get up to all the time." But what she meant was, to be fair, on that side of the microphone where she's the interviewer and she's not the one getting interviewed. That's what she meant, I think. Then we got on to her Alice in Wonderland shoes. Now, Sarah often gets stopped by kindly people telling her that she's got odd shoes on because she's got Alice in Wonderland shoes. And she got Sarah Thompson to describe her Alice in Wonderland shoes. And one shoe said, hang on, I better check this because this could come across the wrong way. One of the shoes says, "Drink me," and the other shoe says, "Eat me." So obviously, little phrases from the Alice in Wonderland story, which it's a little bit worrying that Sarah wears Alice in Wonderland shoes. I don't know what it is. It's a bit whatever happened to Baby Jane sort of vibe for me, because I imagine her, she seems to be obsessed with Alice in Wonderland. What do you think that comes from? There just seems to be a bit of an Alice in Wonderland theme. I'm a little worried that she's going to turn up in the blue dress with the white penny and her shoes that don't match and the headband. Well, she does wear headbands. It could look a little bit Bette Davis, a little bit whatever happened to Baby Jane, you know, because there's a certain age that dressing up like Alice in Wonderland just doesn't work. So Sarah Thompson is back in her fawning ways again. She's fawning. She's definitely fawning. And she says, "You sort of live in this very different world." And I'm paraphrasing now. "And all my friends ask me, do you really know her? And is she normal?" Well, I could answer that for you, Sarah, and all your friends. But of course, Sarah Ferguson just loved it because, you know, it just made her just that little bit more special. So then she goes talking about her as a grandmother, and she tells this rather long-winded story about what a great grandmother she is because, of course, you know, she's a fabulous grandmother. I'm sure she is a fabulous grandmother, but does she have to tell us all the time how fabulous she is? Anyway, she's got a bubble-blowing lawnmower for one of her grandchildren. I won't try and name the grandchildren because I'll get it wrong. And so there was an argument between two of the grandchildren about the bubble-blowing lawnmower. So Sarah decides to go off to Daniel's at Windsor because I think she's after freebie toys in the future, like sponsorship. So she said Daniel's, Windsor, about 3 times. So I think she'll probably get, you know, really cheap Christmas presents this year for the grandkids. She dashes off to Daniel's. Oh, no, she went online because she thought better of that. She said she dashed off to get it, and then she quickly changed it till she bought it online. She got another one because there was arguments, you see, between the two grandkids. Now, I owned that bubble-blowing lawnmower when my boys were little, and if they argued over the bubble-blowing lawnmower, that was when they learned how to share. We took turns. Mummy didn't run off and get another one. We took turns. And that's why they've grown into the very fine young men they are today. So then Sarah goes into her usual pseudo-spiritual life coach, meditative sort of spiel, and she says, "I'm learning Sarah now. I'm learning me." And actually today was the first time that Eugenia's heard me say, I'm fighting for Sarah. I'm working for Sarah. I'm putting Sarah first. And did Eugenie actually think it was strange that her mother stands there and talks about herself in the third person? That would freak me out. I would start to worry about my mother's mental health if she was standing there talking about herself in the third person. Anyway, Eugenie overlooked that small fact and said, "Whoa, wow, Mum, I've never heard you talk about yourself like that, apparently." And that surprised me because I sort of figure that seeing I've heard Sarah talk about that for the last 3 episodes, I'm figuring that maybe Eugenie might have heard it before. She might have. Then what else have we got? Okay, so we're talking in the third person, Sarah first, working for Sarah. And, now this was perfect. She didn't mention the parapet. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for not mentioning the parapet. But she did mention little Sarah and big Sarah. So I think, Sarah, now I've begged you not to say parapet. Now I'm begging you not to say about little Sarah and big Sarah, because that just really confuses me. Because all I see is a 63-year-old Sarah, and I'm not knocking your age because I'm pretty close to that myself. But I'm just thinking, when you get to a certain age, maybe it's time to merge. You know, little Sarah and big Sarah. And actually she does realise that because she says it's really interesting to merge little Sarah and big Sarah as it means I've come on a bit. And then she says the most insightful, gobsmackingly aware thing that I think she's ever said. She said, and as I'm saying that, I can just hear all the people out there saying, "Oh, shut up, we don't want to hear any more about you." You nailed it. You're starting to get to know your audience. Actually, it's interesting. I've got to tell you one serious point. She's been sprung because, you know, the head above the parapet phrase that I begged her not to use in episode 3, and she didn't, to be fair. Paul Burrell says in his book, A Royal Duty, that was one of Diana's go-to phrases. If I put my head above the parapet, I'll be shot. Diana's go-to phrase. So then Sarah Ferguson goes on to talk about a tipsy guy on the train who was doing a crossword, and he started reading out the clues, and it was a great example of unity in the community because everyone on the train joined in and they ended up doing the crossword. And then that led to Sarah to say, "Bravo, bravo, that's marvellous." And then she said that she loves trains and she'd love to do a podcast on the train platform, and she'd love to have people come up and tell her how wonderful she is. I think she didn't say that, but that was sort of the implication. And then she said, "And I'd love to go on the Orient Express, and I'd love to do," and I'd... She's got grandiose ideas. Actually, even through the podcast, at some point she said, "So if you want us to build you a school, or if you want us to build you a library, just drop us a line, send us an email, we'll be there." And Sarah Thompson's. Then they got on to quite an interesting thing about the kids that got lost from the plane crash. You might have read about it, and they survived for 40 days and nights in the Amazon jungle, and it was due to survival techniques that their grandmother had actually taught these kids. Fascinating story. And Sarah Thompson introduced that story well. But then Sarah Ferguson said, "Oh yes, I've just been to Colombia and I pledged this to you tonight." And at that point my ears just started ringing because I thought, how can she make the kids lost in the Amazon jungle about her? So I've written here that actually episode 3 was even more excruciating than episode 1, episode 2, because I said that I feel like we're getting into the realms of losing attachment to reality. So That was just a note I made. And yes, so it's interesting to see what episode 4 is going to bring. And I hope it brings us a giggle, but it's also a little bit alarming because Sarah seems to be becoming even freer in the things she says, but she has learnt to sort of end her sentences, take a breath, and let Sarah Thompson sort of speak occasionally. I'll see you again very soon. Bye.